heavy rain. Much of the southeast got quite a soaking as well, and it continued.
On Earth has better weather.
This tropical update is brought to you by Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse. When it comes to home improvement, Lowe's knows.
Okay, yesterday we were talking about Hurricane Nora off the Baja Peninsula of California. This morning we're merely left with a tropical low. This is that very same system as it has weakened dramatically. Yesterday about 11 o'clock Pacific time, we had the center of circulation to come onshore here in northern Mexico, and then several hours later it moved right across near Yuma, Arizona, with a forward speed of some 25 miles an hour. So it weakened quite a bit as it moved inland. Of course, it lost the source of moisture and the source of energy, which was the open waters here. And we still have some tropical moisture with it, and before all said and done, an additional an additional inch or so of rain possible across the region, as we will continue to watch the moisture feed in across the Baja, or should I say across the Wasatch Frontier of Utah. Our most recent radar shows, satellite picture anyway, shows quite a bit of moisture still with it. You can see the higher clouds here over eastern Arizona, across the central, southern, northern parts of Utah. We have wet weather reported right now around the Salt Lake City area and even Cedar City, Utah in the southern parts. But rain has been locally heavy with this system. California, Arizona, even around northern Las Vegas, we had over 3/4 of an inch of rain. But topping the list, Mount Laguna washed California with over 4 inches of rain, and there you see Yuma, Arizona with over 2.5 inches. Now in Yuma we typically see about 2.5 inches for the entire year on average for total rainfall, so you can imagine that this has caused some problems to get so much rain in a short period of time. It's all relative, and the deserts typically don't see this much rain in a short period of time. So a flood watch remains in effect. The northern parts of Arizona today, southern Utah, as you can see this batch right here along Interstate 15. Flooding can be a problem. Be careful in the area. Salt Lake City, wet, as all of this is generally moving off toward the north and east. So what's left of Nora is just as tropical moisture that is feeding north into the central Rockies for now, and eventually moving into the northern Rockies. Over the eastern Pacific, a little farther east, of course, and we've been watching this area of disturbed weather. You can see the large area of convection here. We'll continue to watch this. For now, it's not an organized system. It's not a tropical depression or a tropical storm. It could become a tropical depression later on. To the west, we've been watching an upper level low, and perhaps that has been shearing some of the higher cloud tops apart, but it's holding together pretty good, and we'll keep our eyes on this system, as will the National Hurricane Center, and of course we'll pass on to you the latest information that we receive from the National Hurricane Center, but definitely we'll watch it for you. The Western Caribbean is another area. Now, we've had quite a bit of convection here, as you can see, even some convection approaching the Yucatan Peninsula. Upper air winds are very favorable as we have an anticyclonic flow aloft, high pressure aloft. So this area has been pretty favorable for tropical development, but no low-level circulation has been detected. One little wave moving north of Puerto Rico, not organized at all. And winds out of the west in the upper levels have been fairly strong all the way to the West African coast. So the waves that come off the coast are pretty much torn apart by those upper air winds, so nothing too threatening across the central or the eastern Atlantic. Let's go back across the Pacific waters. We have Typhoon Ginger here. It has been moving north and will continue to move north and then eventually veer off toward the east, but it's affecting no landmass areas. A little farther west, and we see the Bay of Bengal here, and over the northeastern parts of India near Bangladesh, heavy rains.
If it weren't for Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse, you'd pay more.
If you
the latest on the tropics. We now have a new tropical depression in the eastern Pacific, TD17E. I'll have the latest on that in just a second. First of all, what's happening with the remnants of Nora? Well, Nora just basically is a weak low-pressure center in southwest Utah, but with it plenty of tropical moisture, copious amounts of moisture, and as a result, even though a lot of it has moved, a lot of the moisture has moved into Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado, pockets of moisture are left behind. This one in particular, and even though we don't see any real cold cloud tops here on the colorized satellite view, doesn't make much difference because 3 inches of rain have fallen, 3 inches or more, around Wickenburg, Arizona so far today, and that has produced flash flooding and some evacuations in washes near Wickenburg. Flagstaff, some heavy rain too. Oak Creek Canyon likely getting doused with some tropical downpours at this point. What may be enhancing the precipitation is the orographic lift, because there's about a 6,000-foot rise in the terrain between Phoenix and Flagstaff. That upward motion cools and condenses the moist atmosphere and may be aiding in enhancing the heavy rains in central Arizona. At any rate, Maricopa County still under a flash flood warning. Notice it's drying out in Southern California after your heavy downpours yesterday, at least heavy for September for LA and San Diego. Radar shows little, if any, precipitation at all now in Southern California. Here in central Arizona, though, from about Wickenburg to Sedona, Flagstaff, heavy rain right now. Williams, too. There may be tough traveling on I-40 along the rim, and the interstate south of Flagstaff, too, may have standing water on it and very poor visibility. If you have travel plans today, or if you're hiking, obviously it wouldn't be if it's raining heavily, but some folks traveling, you should be especially careful of the narrow canyons, the washes, and stay away from the streams and rivers today, too, in central Arizona because of the quick runoff which is occurring right now. All right, let's go down and take a look at TD17E, 11.5 north, 94.5 west, just south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec, 515 miles southeast of Acapulco. The sustained winds 35, TD's moving north at 7, and the pressure 1,006 millibars. A couple of features here for you. One is an upper level low in this vicinity. TD17E is rotating around that, now moving north. That motion may continue, but it may also wrap around the upper low, which would mean a northward and then a northwestward track eventually. We'll watch it for you. The tropical wave in the western Caribbean shows a flare-up in thunderstorm activity. We'll watch this region closely. There is high pressure aloft. Even if something doesn't develop, the moisture will be drawn into the southeast U.S. into areas that have had heavy rain recently. Some big storms with another upper low near Puerto Rico. Rough surf and frequent lightning. There has been a special marine warning in effect. Coastal waters for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. East of the islands, shearing winds in the upper levels make this region unfavorable for any tropical development anytime in the near future. In the Pacific, Typhoon Ginger, a powerful typhoon with a very small eye, far away from any significant landmass, and expected to stay in the mid-Pacific. While in the coastal waters of India, approaching the Bay of Bengal, approaching the country of Bangladesh, we have a tropical cyclone, which may cause all sorts of problems as it moves inland during the next 12 to 24 hours. A powerful cyclone, maybe minimal hurricane strength. Bangladesh could be in the news because of flooding and wind damage in the next 24 hours. We'll watch that for you.
That's where we dip you into some goo and you have to squish around and tell us what you think you stepped in, all right?
And I don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is. So we are going to blindfold you and put on these earphones so you can't hear or see a thing. And we're going to tell everyone at home that today's dip is... All right, here we go. There's a big step up and in.
Oh, nastiness.
In there. What does it feel like?
It's very cold.
The Weather Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
Well, here we are. We continue our pattern of seeing a lot going on the Pacific side of Mexico and Central America, but certainly not very much on the Atlantic side. Nothing organized in the Atlantic, but now we have a new tropical storm again in the Pacific. This was just upgraded to a tropical storm this morning and already to a tropical depression this morning and already to a tropical storm this afternoon. And it's moving toward the north about 8 miles an hour, centered at 12.6, 94.2. and that's about 250 miles to the south-southeast of Salina Cruz in Mexico. Now this movement toward the north is pretty interesting. It's causing a little bit of concern, and for that reason a tropical storm watch has been issued here for a portion of the Mexican coast from Punta Maldonado down to Tapachula. That's well to the southeast of Acapulco, which is right up there. Now the forecast for the storm, the official forecast, calls for it to move toward the north tonight and then gradually turn a little bit more toward the northwest and make landfall up here on the Mexican coast sometime around the next, say, 24 to 36 hours or something like that. And if it does that, it wouldn't have time to increase very much. Now, there are some indications, some models want to do something a little different with that. They actually want to bring it across this narrow isthmus here in the Bay of Tehuantepec up into the southern Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche. But right now, that doesn't seem very likely. It seems as if the most likely path will be for it to move into the coast of Mexico before it could get too strong, but it may get up to, say, 50 or 55 miles an hour sustained winds and produce some very heavy rains along the coast. And of course, with a tropical system, it doesn't have to get to be a hurricane for it to be lots of rainfall, and especially where you have hilly country such as you do here, with the hills coming down pretty close actually to the seacoast, the foothills. So now we will turn our attention to the Atlantic, where we have some interesting features, but nothing getting organized into a depression. Even though we have high pressure in the upper atmosphere here, and we've had a persistent area of concentrated clouds and showers down here in the Caribbean, they've come up into the Gulf of Mexico and indeed curving northeastward up over Florida, where there has been some extremely heavy rain today. Right down here you see is the new tropical storm Olaf. Now, out in the eastern Atlantic, we see the same pattern we have seen for a long time, with pretty good upper level westerly winds across there. But around Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands here, you can see we have a low in the upper atmosphere, and there has been some pretty unsettled weather there today. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. Some pretty squally weather and quite a lot of rain in some areas. So now we'll turn our attention to the Western Caribbean, which we have been watching very closely. And as you can see here, we have a widespread area extending all the way from Florida well down into the Caribbean, where we have concentrations of clouds and a lot of showers. And we do believe that we have a very weak low pressure system right there. Okay, what's going to happen to that? Well, we think it's going to move to the north, actually get in the Gulf of Mexico, and the most likely scenario is for that to sort of merge with the front before it could develop into a significant tropical system. But in the meantime, Florida is going to continue to get pounded with very heavy rain. It's just a continuous supply of moisture is coming up from the Caribbean across the southeast Gulf and into Florida. Some of that rain has already been heavy. We've had indications up in Seminole and Pinellas County of amounts up to 7 or 8 inches reported by some spotters. Now here you see the same feature again here in the Gulf, and right about there we may be organizing a weak low pressure center. We'll keep you posted on that as time goes by. Nice weather here south of Hispaniola, and here's the disturbed weather around Puerto Rico just about as it gets dark. You can see it better on this picture right here. That is moving westward, and because it is associated with a low in the upper atmosphere, we're not thinking that that has any likelihood of developing into a storm. And again, out here in the Atlantic, the westerly winds are just too strong to allow anything to get formed out there. So now we'll take you way out to the West Pacific and even the Indian Ocean, where we have Typhoon Junior here, which is getting very powerful. It's forecast to be a super typhoon. That is winds of over 150 miles an hour, but moving out over the open Pacific and not going to threaten any land area, certainly not for the next 2 or 3 days. But out here in the Indian Ocean, Bangladesh, we have a cyclone, top wind 75 miles an hour, moving into the mouth of the Ganges here, where it's very subject to floods when you have a cyclone. That's the tropics. Back to Lisa.
Thanks, John.